Hi class, this is the last video for chapter 6. We're going to summarize this chapter and also look at some practice problems here. Okay, summary. Exchange rate systems can be classified as fixed rate, freely floating, managed float, and pegged. Okay, again, 4 different type of exchange rate systems here. In a fixed exchange rate system, exchange rates are either held constant or allowed to fluctuate only within very narrow boundaries. Okay, so in a fixed exchange rate system, exchange rates are held either constant or very narrow boundaries. In a freely floating exchange rate system, exchange rate values are determined by market forces without intervention. In the managed float system, exchange rates are not restricted by boundaries, but are subject to government intervention. Not restricted to boundaries, but subject to government intervention. Pegged exchange rate system means that a currency's value is pegged to a foreign currency or unit of account and moves in line with that currency or unit of account against other currencies. Numerous European countries use the euro as their home currency. The single currency allows international trade by firms within the eurozone without foreign exchange rate expenses and without concerns about future exchange rate movements. However, countries that participate in the euro do not have complete control of their monetary policy because one monetary policy is applied to all countries in the eurozone. Okay, so they not only have just one currency, they also have just one monetary policy within the eurozone. In addition, some countries might be more susceptible to a crisis in another country in the eurozone as a result of being in the eurozone. Okay, so there is advantage and a disadvantage of having this eurozone with single currency and single monetary policy. Governments can use direct intervention by purchasing or selling currencies in the foreign exchange market, thereby affecting demand and supply conditions, and in turn affecting the equilibrium values of the currencies. Okay, direct intervention, buying or selling directly in the foreign exchange market. When a government purchases a currency in the foreign exchange market, it puts upward pressure on the currency's equilibrium value. Okay, when you're buying something, you're increasing its demand, so the price will be higher. When the government sells a currency in the foreign exchange market, it puts downward pressure on the currency's equilibrium value. Governments can use also indirect intervention by influencing the 5 economic factors that affect equilibrium exchange rates. Okay, and also for direct intervention, it could be non-sterilized, okay, so that the government just buy and sell the currency in the foreign exchange market and does nothing to offset the change in the money supply. Okay, we also have sterilized direct intervention where the government issue treasury securities or buy back treasury securities to offset the change in the money supply. Okay, and for indirect intervention, we have 5 economic factors that the government can affect, so they can affect the exchange rates in the end. Okay, the 5 factors are the change in inflation rate, the change in interest rate, the change in income, government control, and expectation. Okay, the same 5 factors we learned in the previous chapter. When government intervention is used to weaken the US dollar, the weak dollar can stimulate the US economy by reducing US demand for imports and increasing the foreign demand for US exports. Okay, so if we want to weaken the US dollar, we can reduce US demand for imports. Excuse me, if we weaken US dollar, okay, no matter the government is using direct intervention or indirect intervention, if the US dollar is weakened, it can help stimulate the US economy by reducing imports and increasing exports. Thus, the weak dollar tends to reduce US unemployment, but it can increase US inflation. Okay, we have less imports and more exports, so it reduces unemployment and increases US inflation. Okay, the domestic price will be higher and employment rate will be higher too. On the other hand, if the government strengthens the US dollar, okay, then the imports will be higher, thereby intensifying foreign competition. The strong dollar can reduce US inflation, but may cause a higher level of US unemployment rate. Okay. The domestic price will be lower in this case, and there will be loss of jobs domestically as well. Let's look at a practice question here. The currency of country X is pegged to the currency of country Y. Assume that country Y's currency depreciates against the currency of country Z. It is likely that country X will export to country Z and import from country Z. Okay, I'll leave you 30 seconds in the video to think about this question. You can also pause the video. Okay, I'm gonna show you the next slide with the answer. So if you need more time, you can continue pausing the video. If not, let's look at the next slide. Okay, the right answer is C. When currency X is pegged to currency Y, it means that X and Y would move in the same direction. Okay, so if currency Y depreciates against Z, then X should also depreciate against Z. Okay, so country X would export more to country Z and will import less from country Z. Okay, because currency Z is strengthened, so there's more exports, and also because X is less valued, so there's less imports. Okay, let's look at another practice problem here. Assume countries A, B, and C produce goods that are substitutes of each other, and that these countries engage in trade with each other. Assume that country A's currency floats against country B's currency, and that country C's currency is pegged to B's. If A's currency depreciates against B, then A's exports to C should, and A's imports from C should. Again, I'm gonna leave 30 seconds here in the video for you to think about it. Okay, so if you need more time, you can pause the video. Otherwise, let's go to the next slide. Okay, this question is very similar to the first one, even though we have more information here, but we know A depreciates against B, and we know C is pegged to B, right? So A should depreciate against C as well. Then A's exports to C should increase, okay, because C is more valuable. Currency C is more valuable right now. There is more foreign demand, so there's more exports to C. A's imports from C should be less, okay, decrease, because A has less value right now, so there's less imports. Okay, the right answer is C. Okay, so that's all the practice problems. Here in the last slide, it shows us the summary of what we're gonna discuss in the second part of our whole class. We're gonna discuss about exchange rate behavior. Okay, so we're gonna look at covered interest arbitrage, locational arbitrage, triangular arbitrage, Fisher effect, international Fisher effect in the future classes. Okay, and we're gonna come back to this slide in the future. All right, I'll see you in the next video, and we're gonna start about chapter 7 in the next video.